People turn to doctors to treat their symptoms or issues related to diseases, injuries, or other health-related problems. They tend to their patients, develop new medicines, and research cures. However, some doctors are not what they are made out to be. Top Central presents 10 doctors you won't believe actually exist. Number 10. Cecil Jacobson. Having been dubbed Babymaker, Jacobson was a U.S. fertility doctor who was indicted in 1992 for using his own sperm to impregnate his female patients. He was a fertility specialist that specialized in treating patients who had difficulties getting pregnant. Jacobson would falsify pregnancies, having the patient undo ultrasounds and then tell them that the fetus had died. In addition, Jacobson had been artificially inseminating patients with sperm, his own sperm. It is suspected that Jacobson may be the father to as many as 75 of these children. He was given a 5-year sentence to prison and a $115,000 fine. Number 9. Michael Swango. Michael Swango, a former doctor, had been accused of fatally poisoning 3 patients in a Long Island hospital. Michael Swango pledged guilty to 5 counts of a 9-count federal indictment and was sentenced to a life term in prison without parole. In 1993, Swango was accused of injecting the 3 patients at the Veteran Affairs Hospital in Northport, saying that he intentionally killed the victims by administering toxin substances which I knew were likely to cause death. Number 8. Walter Freeman. Walter Freeman has been dubbed the father of the lobotomy, an infamous procedure that involves hammering an ice pick-like instrument into a patient's brain through their eye sockets. This horrifying procedure often left patients in a vegetative state and is responsible for an estimated 490 deaths. He believed that the excess emotions led to mental illness and that severing certain nerves in the brain could stabilize a person's personality. Number 7. Dr. Su Ying. Dr. Ying was convicted of murder for patients' drug overdoses. She was guilty of second-degree murder and the first case in which a doctor had been convicted of murder in the United States for overprescribing drugs. Ying addressed her sorrow in the courtroom, stating, "I'm really terribly sorry. I have been and forever will be praying for you. May God bless all of you and grant comfort to all who have been affected by my actions." Dr. Ying was sentenced to 30 years to life in prison. Number 6. Harold Shipman. Harold Shipman, a British doctor and serial killer, murdered at least 215 of his patients. In 1998, one of his patients, who was an 80-year-old woman, was discovered dead in her home only hours after Shipman had visited her. In 2000, Shipman was convicted on 15 counts of murder and 1 count of forgery. In 2002, reports found that Shipman killed at least 215 and possibly as many as 260 people. Shipman would inject the victim with a lethal dose of painkiller and signed a death certificate attributing the incident to natural causes. He was sentenced to a life term in prison. Number 5. Jack Kevorkian. Jack Kevorkian, a pathologist known as Dr. Death, has helped 130 people commit suicide when terminally ill. Kevorkian built a suicide machine known as the Mercitron to inject lethal drug doses for people who sought his help in dying. After one of his injections was shown on national television, he served 8 years in jail for murder. He stated, "I'm trying to knock the medical profession into accepting its responsibilities, and those responsibilities include assisting their patient with death." Number 4. H. Holmes. Holmes is known as America's first well-known serial killer. Holmes was a well-educated person who graduated from the University of Michigan. He funded his education with a series of insurance scams where he requested coverage for non-existent people and then presented corpses as the insured. In 1886, he built a giant home called the Castle, with secret passageways, fake walls, and trap doors. Young women in the area would rent rooms out in Holmes's castle, and they were often never seen again. He would sell the human skeletons to medical schools, but he was never asked how he obtained the anatomy specimens. Authorities discovered the remains of over 200 victims on his property, and Holmes was hanged to death. Number 3. Joseph Mengele. Nicknamed Angel of Death, Dr. Mengele has been carrying out horrific experiments on human beings. Body parts and brains of victims were found at a leading German research institute. The gruesome remains were discovered in jars during renovations of the Psychiatric Institute in Munich. During wartime, the institute regularly received human body parts from Mengele. Number 2. Ilya Zelenidov. Ilya, a Russian doctor, was accused of fatally beating a patient at a hospital and was charged with third-degree murder. It was said that the patient did not defend himself against the doctor. Feeling remorse, Ilya gave the patient's family $1,200 to cover the funeral expenses and faces 2 years in prison for involuntary manslaughter. Number 1. Jeffrey J. Abram. Jeffrey J. Abram has been accused of molesting and raping patients at a California clinic. Female patients would show up to Abraham Clinic with health problems as minor as a stomach ache or skin rash. With a different intention in mind, Dr. Abram ordered the patient to strip naked as the doctor molested and photographed them under the medical exam. One of his victims was only 8 years old. Abraham was sentenced to a year of house arrest for 8 counts of sexual penetration of an unconscious person and was stripped of his medical license and labeled a sex offender. Subscribe for more.